Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. It's a good showing tonight. It's really nice to see that. Yeah. Um, Maybe if I stand up. So, but I think it's just for the recording. So yeah, I paint watercolors. It took me kind of a long time to get to where I am, so it's a process. I'm sure a lot of you understand that. Like you go through, you start something and you're like, this is great, and then you're like, I hate it, and then you start something else and you're like, oh wait, this is great, but then you hate that, and you just keep bouncing around. Um, One of my biggest obstacles with watercolors was finding surfaces to paint on, because back in college you get to experiment a lot, but for watercolor it really wasn't pursued. Like a lot of people were just like, here's paper, here you go, paint it. And I'm like, okay. And I like the paper. I liked working on the paper and I enjoyed watercolors, but I always used it as a kind of a sketch type thing to get to a bigger, more complete work. More like, because I would use like oils, move to acrylics, and do these like quite larger, more abstract compositions that I would just kind of come up with. But after school, I was just kind of done, and I was like, I don't want to keep doing these oils. I don't want to keep doing this acrylic, and I moved to the costuming side of what I like to do, because I was like, I need a job in that and I can get paid, and people were paying me, so that was kind of hard to turn down. It is. But I kept, as I was doing that, I kept wanting to go back to that more kind of creative, less, people paying you to do what they want you to do, to where you're just really focusing on yourself. So I just wanted to get back to that like introverted, I guess, selfishness, if you will, which it sounds very like crass, but it actually does feel really good. So yeah, I mean, you got to have something that you want to do, and that's it. There's really no other reason, just because you want to do it, and just keep going. And yeah, I feel like that, like your personality starts to come through. Your true kind of spirit comes through when you do that, and the colors and just the movement of the paint, and you know what you're doing. And it's always nice when people react positively to it, and people have, been positive as long as I've been showing stuff. But I get back on track here. I found the Yupo after somebody mentioned it to me years ago, and I liked it, but I couldn't quite figure out exactly how to apply it to what I wanted to do. So before that, I was working with some of the absorbent grounds, mixing that with various acrylic mediums and stuff to kind of give me that less of a chalky kind of dried paper kind of feel, and more of a smooth kind of hot press paper feel. That's what I wanted. I wanted like that smooth texture where the pigment would just sit and pool, and I like to use a lot of water and just these nice big washes of just color. So that's kind of where my progression. And then I started using the Yupo, and I noticed that the saturation in the paper, like the pigment it's so saturated, and I just loved it. And like one of my favorite colors is yellow, my little saffron. And I just, the way that it just shines on the Yupo, I loved it. So I just kept pushing with it. And then as I was going along, the Yupo it's kind of pricey. And I think a lot of you, some of you have talked to me and said that you've used it. And I think some of you have seen the problems with it. It's a very smooth, shiny surface. And I find sometimes that it's very inconsistent, especially with just water. And that's mainly what I'm using. So you would get these little kind of like, I don't know what to call it, little white spots that would just kind of, where it wouldn't like draw the water in, it would just kind of repel it. And I was getting a little frustrated, but I still liked it, so I was keeping using it. And then I came across the mineral paper, just kind of by accident, on just in the art store here in Rochester, and I picked it up. Mineral paper. It's, I have the pad up here if you want to take a look at it. It's, what is it? Yeah, that is it. Yasotomo. Yeah, I think it's calcium carbonate. Yeah. It's the makers of it. Yeah. And I don't know, I found that it has a slightly more satin finish on it, and it just is very consistent and smooth, and I like that kind of matte finish. And I've just been having a lot of really good luck with it, and I feel like I think it would work for a lot of media, not just watercolor, because I think you could probably get into this with, you might be able to get into it with pencil. I don't know how well the pencil would adhere to it. So definitely some sort of like paint, wet media. Acrylics probably be great. Alcohol ink probably be great. Yeah.
And is that considerably less cost-wise?
Yeah. I can't remember the exact cost, but it's cheaper. You get a little more pieces per pad than you do with the Yupo. It comes in a couple thicknesses. Yupo, yeah, so that's the, it's YUPO. That's the, there's stuff in there, so just handle that. Yeah, this is the Yupo. And this is a great product too. I love it as well. The nice thing about Yupo is you can buy it in a really big roll, and you can do some large pieces, which I've done and I do. It's quite fun. Yeah.
Are there different qualities of Yupo? Does it come in different weights or other?
Yeah, it does. There's I think it's really, I feel like it's like a heavyweight, a lightweight, and a transparent.
And that one said medium, so
That's the medium, yeah. The heavyweight is quite a bit more expensive, so I just haven't gotten into that. And I try to maintain a lower budget just to stay working. And it comes transparent too, which has kind of an interesting finish.
is the mineral paper also transparent or opaque?
It's, I have some up here. It's very thin, and it does have kind of a translucency to it. So painting on white, if you want that white to show, if you put it on anything like to mount it, you definitely want to have a white piece of paper back there so it shows through. Otherwise, everything's going to show through. I did notice that. But there is a heavier weight one and a lighter weight one. I think I have both up there. But it's just, I don't know. I find it more consistent than the Yupo in its finish, if that makes sense. Oh, no, I don't know where to go. Like my painting style, like my process is very kind of chaotic. I tend to be a little ADD, and I go from, a lot of things. Even when I'm talking, I don't know how much sense I make. Like it's sometimes all over the place. And I think it's just the way my brain works. So it's like here, here, here. So what I like to do is do like a lot of small little things that really don't mean anything to me, so that I don't have to think about them. Because once I start thinking about something, it starts to get a little contrived, and then I'm like, I get frustrated, and then I don't want to do it. So the way that I get around that is I start doing small things. Like the hearts are kind of like a really small, easy shape that I make, but I can get nice experimental color mixtures, textures, whatever I want to do with it. Yeah.
You want to bring them over to the camera?
Or you can hold them up.
Yeah. We can pause that. Oh, yeah, we can go to that next. But yeah, you can see
These
it.
are on mineral paper?
These ones right here, I'm feeling them. These are on Yupo. This is just paper. You can. I liked let me focus. The reason why I do like the Yupo and the mineral paper is because I can use a lot of water on it. And I like to use a lot of water just to kind of give it that random, I don't know, I like that it's a little more random than it is intentional. And that's just what I like to do. It just makes my brain feel better.
Can you show us how you delimit the shape?
Yeah. I'm kind of a minimalist when I go to paint. I don't really like to draw and then paint. If I'm gonna draw, I'm gonna draw. I don't usually mix the two. But, don't let that stop you from doing anything, because there's nothing wrong with drawing your shape out first. I apologize if anybody can't hear me. So if you want to come up. I'm not.
Couple more chairs up here.
Yeah. So this is my palette. I don't know, like,
Sarah,
yeah.
I think if people, we really have to get a good microphone, and we apologize for that, but if some of you want to come up and bring a chair along the edges up here.
Yeah, I don't mind if anybody wants to come. It's not going to bother me too much. So if anybody wants to come.
There are empty seats up this way too, if anyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you can hear,
Up
that's
to
great. So what I like to do is just make these kind of simple shapes. Sometimes they're more complex. The cats do end up as kind of that. Like, I make a lot of cats. I don't know how much I can focus right now to do the cats like here, but I can do it. But like these shapes, they're so easy to do. I like to tell people to do these things. It's kind of as a form of like artistic meditation. It's kind of therapeutic. So when you're feeling like, I don't know what to do, maybe I should stop, or like, maybe I don't want to do this, like just do something simple that you don't have to think about, and then you can just kind of feel the, your surfaces and your paints and whatever you're using. So it helps me. So that's what I do. So like I said,
Like play.
my brain just doesn't, like you just want to feel it.
Play,
Yeah.
feel.
And don't think too much about it. Like you're gonna, like every single one you're gonna do, you're gonna learn something from. So that's what I do. I'll just take a deep breath for a second. But I usually, like with the hearts, it's very easy because I can just, that's good. And like I said, like it's a simple shape, so I really don't have to think too much about it. Like I like to, you can put, I'll start with the water. Like I just drew my shape out in water. And then I'll paint. Like it's a very simple process. It's not something I like, I would say don't think about it too much. Just go in there and learn about like you can kind of see the reflection when you're painting with water. It's not going to flow too much if you're just using a little bit. I still have yet to figure out what the finish is on this, chemically wise, but there's something on here. And the paper does, if you have like you do kind of a thin layer of water, it evaporates or whatever it does pretty quickly, so it does dry.
That is the Yupo using that?
This is the mineral paper, yeah. But the color, and it's going to depend on what brand of paint you're using and, how much pigment you want to use, how the paint flows. There's additives you can add to watercolors. I don't usually add a whole lot. I just like to see what happens. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of dish soap in my water just to break the surface tension a little bit, and it sometimes helps it kind of flow. Oxgall is the other thing you can add to get more flow, if you want it.
What is that item,
Oxgall.
OX?
Yeah, Oxgall. But honestly, you can just use like Dawn dish soap. Just a drop or two in your water and makes a little soapy. It cuts the surface tension a little bit. It works well. It works. I meant to bring it, but I didn't.
That makes it run more? Or
Yeah,
it's still
it'll flow a little more, and you can, like this particular color doesn't
right.
flow too much, but I know that this one does.
Do you ever work on a slanted
I don't.
palette?
I don't because I don't want the drip.
Right.
I know this particular color flows more, so you can kind of see what happens when the.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think this just has a higher content of the oxgall, but you could get a really nice just flow in there, and it's fun to watch.
Are you using watercolor now or the acrylic ink?
This is all watercolor.
All watercolor.
I don't care too much about my my brands of watercolor. I have, there's a bunch in here that I have. Like Winsor Newton is usually my favorite. I just like the richness of their pigments. I got some Van Gogh in there. And I have been using the core watercolors, which have been working nice. And I do find they mix just as well. I think it has a different binder. If you look it up on the Golden website, it'll tell you. But I find it works pretty core. It's this one. QOR. I'll put it right here if you want. But I liked it. That's nice. And they have a good range of colors and pigments. That's the mineral paper. Yeah. Yep, this is the mineral paper. But yeah, you just get, like, you can get just really saturated, colors. And that's not going to go away. That's essentially going to dry like that. And like, that's just wet watercolor onto it. But getting the shapes, like, wherever you put the water, that's where your pigment's going to go. And it's the same with any kind of paper that you use, any kind of sized paper. It's going to do the same thing. Like, that gelatin that's on the paper is going to hold that water, like, where you put it, unless you oversaturate it, which happens, and you get a little thing. But you can see, like, if you, like, that's the point, but, like, the minute you break that, side, like, you're going to get, like, it's going to, yeah. And you get a lot of flow. But you can add a lot of water to this paper, and, it's not going to wrinkle. I do sometimes use droppers or, like, little squirt bottles to put stuff in. The other thing, let's use some of this. This is, I like the Daler Brownie ink products, like their acrylics. They flow really nice, and that's really the only reason. Like, I don't know if there's, like, something about it that's just, like, so much better. I don't know if it's, quality-wise. But I really, like, a drop of this, like, goes a long way. Like, and that's all you need. Like, just, like, it mixes so well with the watercolor, and you do get a little play between the opacity and the transparency of the two. You can leave it like that, but if you go back into it, like, it'll just keep, reworking. And, like, you can kind of see in there, if anybody wants to come up, you can kind of see how the pigments kind of break up as the water, like, pools and different things kind of dry. Like, you'll get these kind of lines, and that happens in watercolor on paper too. But I find that the mineral paper just gives you these nice, really very, very fluid, almost marbled looking finish to it. It's really pretty. And yeah, they're just, here, if you want to pass these ones out, they can see those. It's just, you can see kind of some of the details, because you can get really fine details in these. These are on Yupo, though. Yeah.
You added that yellow ink, INK. Is that just regular ink?
Yep, this is this. I don't know if that shows up well. I'll come and show you. It's no, this is, I think it's acrylic. It says watercolor ink. My guess is it's like an acrylic base, but wait, where'd you go? Oh, there you go. That's it. Yeah. I have a couple of other ones that I like. This is the watercolor ink. This brand makes a really nice iridescent ink as well, which I really love. So the other, and like when I'm doing these in my studio, I just turn them out, because like I said, I don't want to think about it.
Would this Yupo have been not the heaviest grade, right?
It might be the medium. I don't usually get the heavy because it's too expensive, I find. And I don't really need it to be the heaviest weight. Yeah.
I don't know if I'll get, because the colors don't come out.
The white balance on it, I have a really hard time photographing it. The other thing that's interesting about the working with the Yupos and the mineral. One sec. So one of the other things I find interesting about working with the non-absorbent paper is that when you mix colors, when you're mixing by hand, they tend to separate. Like, so each color that you mixed in with your mixed color is kind of going to come out. You can see it a lot in some of these larger pieces that I did, like, because I like to mix a lot of grays and kind of those nice tertiary kind of, you know, colors. You just get a lot of, you know, blend in there.
Can you show those to the camera, the bigger ones? And the cats?
Yeah.
Please.
Push spotlight.
While she's doing that, I read last night, I haven't tried it yet, but if you put the dawn, your portrait, in your watercolor, you can use it on a jelly plate.
Oh, yeah. I bet that would work good, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting
I
idea.
haven't tried it, I just read it last night.
It would probably work because, yeah, it probably would. It may be an interesting way to see how like it would like flow onto it. Yeah. But you do get like I said, I like to mix like kind of those nice tertiaries and get those nice grays. I don't have too neat of a palette, but it is.
Who does?
I mean, I find it fun. Isn't it? It's just less thinking. But I do like these gray colors, and initially they look very boring, which, I mean, and it's a great gray, right? But
And did you mix that?
I did. It's usually magenta and green, gives you a nice gray. This is my favorite gray, but
Well, it's common, tell me if this is correct. What's common across the mineral and the Yupo is that it's drying on the surface. It's not being absorbed.
correct, yeah. And that's why it's staying so saturated. Like, it's great.
And it blends.
Not long, depending on how much water you use. Like, if you don't use a lot of water, you like to have a little more like control over what you're doing, it'll dry pretty quickly. If you do a lot of pooling, like a lot of like which I like to do, it can take overnight to dry. It just depends on what you use. Some of these inks will take a little longer to dry. I do like to. You can kind of see how it's heavy, but like and it's probably just because I use so much water that it kind of breaks up the things, but it does separate. So, you know, don't be afraid to try mixing odd colors. The muddiness that you get with paper doesn't tend to have a negative appearance on these papers. So you can just keep adding pigment and just kind of max that out. And it does have some really interesting effects. Some of the other things about the paper, which I was kind of like worried, like, oh, maybe that's not going to work on this. Salt works very good. Like, it doesn't seem to affect the paper at all. What's good? I'll do some more. But just end up
Did you
with a
bring
nice.
some salt with
I
you?
did, which I will show you. And it kind of just depends on how much water you use. And like, I'll do some deeply. Look at some yellow in there because I like yellow.
So you couldn't use a hairdryer, could you? Because you'd be blowing.
You can. You do want to be careful though that you don't use it on high because you might melt it. So this one I haven't experimented with. I suspect it would tolerate heat better than the Yupo because it's not the plastic, but I haven't experimented.
You gotta be careful not to splash it.
Yeah, but if you want that,
If you want that.
go ahead and try it. Because you will get a light space.
Like I've used canned air.
Oh yeah, so it gets a nice, yeah.
You get that cool spread of
Right.
inks, yeah.
This is, I get this from the dye companies. This is salt. It's just
really?
coarse salt. You can use salt that you get at the grocery store. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I get this from Pro Chemical and Dye. We use it for like dyed fabric, like, but it's just a nice coarse salt.
Looks like sea salt, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably not food grade.
No.
Probably, but you can use food grade
Yeah.
salt. It's fine. You can use the fine like sprinkle salt if you want, or you could get like the harder, like bigger rock salt. You're gonna get different effects with it. But if you just, take a little bit, like a little pinch of salt, however you want. It's all over. But you can kind of. Sometimes it shows up really like clearly, but.
Takes a while.
Yeah, so especially with so much water, a lot of the salt is actually going to dissolve into the water, and you do end up with like these kind of. Sometimes you can end up with a spotted kind of texture, which, it's interesting if you want it. It doesn't affect the paper at all so much, as far as I can tell. And like you can add quite a bit of that if you want.
And when it dries, you have to scrape the salt off. Right?
Yeah, well,
Or
I
brush
mean,
it off or not.
you can.
But sometimes it's not there.
A lot of times it's not there,
Yeah.
and sometimes I leave it because I like the texture it makes, and I don't know how that affects the longevity of the actual composition, the paper. I don't know how it would affect this. It doesn't seem to. So like conservation-wise, I don't know what that's doing. None of what I do, I really don't think too much about the conservation of the actual piece that I'm working on. So it might deteriorate over time.
Why don't you, that's a good point you're making. Why don't
I find it limiting. Like I said, like my brain just like is slightly ADD. If I start focusing on one thing for too long, I kind of get like hyper fixated on it, and I don't like to be there. It's almost obsessive, and I don't like it, and it's very frustrating for me. So I like to just keep going, and I do things pretty quickly, and then I move on to the next one, and I'll end up with like a lot of these just stacked. But what I'll do is finish them, let them dry. I'll set them aside, and I'll just keep working. And I'll go back to these like maybe in a week or two, or maybe in a month, maybe in a year. I don't know. It just depends on when I stop and going back and look. And I'll be like, oh, I like what I did there, or like, oh, I really don't like that. But sometimes if I don't like something, I just have to stop, because I'll keep trying to fix it. So if I set it aside and then just, let it be, don't interact with it, just let it be, and I'll come back to it, and I can I can see what was happening there without my frustration getting in the way of it.
Did you say that you did not care about the archival? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and see, that's, so why not? Why
It's
not the
it's
archival?
hard for me to say, because like I feel like
Like not your problem?
yeah, like it isn't, but like like I said at the beginning, there's a certain level of selfishness with being like an artist and making things for yourself. Like I'm not too concerned about how long it's gonna last. It's just really the making of it, and the process that I'm doing like does so much for me. It's just kind of an added bonus that it's lovely. Like, and then like the more you do, even if it's just little things that you don't care about, everyone's going to get better, and it's just going to look more interesting, and you're going to learn from each one you do. So it's really just, for me, like this process that just keeps kind of rolling over and snowballing into just bigger things. And eventually, like once I have space and I have like myself settled where I'm not working and I have time to sit down and like not be overwhelmed with like everything that's going on, I do like to do a lot of figure work, and I will like that is a little bit more intentional, but it's the same thing. I'll sit down with a bunch of pieces of paper, model or photographs, whatever I'm able to work with, and I'll just do a lot of fast ones, just a lot of fast like sketches that I just do quickly, like the little hearts, and just see what I'm liking and see what shapes I'm liking and see how the brush strokes are moving. I don't want to think about if that's going to last 50 years or if that's going to last 20 years. And sometimes, paper, like, too, if you're working on paper, like, a lot of that, the most inexpensive paper are the ones you find. Like, it's just stuff you found other places, paper bags, craft paper, whatever. You're just going to put something on that. It's kind of one of those things, you get these little magic little finishing things every now and then, and you're like, oh, isn't that too bad that that's not going to last? But you know what? It's still really beautiful. And you had that experience and you made it, and for the short amount of time it's there, people can experience and love it. And it's still and you can take what you learned from that and move it on, to the next one.
If you would like us to hold any of your work up while you're talking, for you to look and
Oh yeah.
see, let me know. I'm
Did
happy
you-
to do that for you.
Sarah,
Yeah.
when I was seeing your studio, I was very interested in those figure works. Is there any chance you could do a couple of sketches, maybe a face or
I could,
a drawing?
I could try.
No pressure.
No, it gets like, I'll be shaky. It'll be like a weird,
Or hold up some of the ones you have. And
We're all really friendly here.
no, I don't so like it. I know, I have this one. I brought this one. So if you want to hold that one up.
Oh, that's
Like,
face is cool too.
yeah. This actually, if you guys want to pass this around, here. This is, I make these sketchbooks. This is all Bristol paper. So it's a smooth finish Bristol. So you get a similar finish to what you get with like some of these Yupo and like, man-made papers.
These are so cool.
Yeah, and they just, like, you can really like saturate the paper with water so you can look at it. But there's a lot of portraits in here, a little bit of figure work. I'll start this one over here if you want. And I have this particular one I think has a lot of everything. I'll start this one back here if you guys want to pass it around. So you can kind of see my process. It's not, I try to be as like unserious as I can when I do these so that, it just turns over and I can, go back and I'll look at that and be like, oh, okay, wait, I like the way I did those lips. Or like, oh, the green, yeah, I like the green. It just keeps your mind kind of like rolling.
This one is on the mineral field. I'm just learning
I
how to tell
think-
the difference.
Yes. It has a kind of weird skin feel. It's weird. If you guys want to,
So I don't lose it in my thought, that you're having an open house at your studio this month, aren't you?
yeah. We're having December. There's two.
I need to see her work.
Yeah, it's, I know there's one on the 7th, and I think there's one the following weekend. It's a Saturday.
I think
The whole building's actually open.
Yeah, at Boxart Studios. Her
This is
studio
the-
was full.
This is the mineral paper if you guys want to. It has this weird tactileness to it, and it's like very wiggly. But that a lot of water, doesn't matter. Doesn't wrinkle, doesn't roll up or like shrink, so I love it.
She's a buck.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. After it dries, I haven't actually tried to go back in and take it up, but before it dries, you can. You definitely can.
You haven't necessarily lifted the paper color off.
No, but I like as it's wet, like you definitely can go in and like just kind of spread.
What did you use there?
So this is the catalyst thing. Out of,
there you go.
it's just a cool silicone tool. Like if you have a silicone spatula, those work great. Yeah, yeah. Credit card, yeah. Anything that you get a nice shirt, you get a little squeegee on there, works great. Those silk screen pullers work nice if you get like really big. Done that. I mean, you can also use your hands to go in there too and kind of like push it away if you want. The sooner you do that, though, the better result you're going to get. And some of the pigments in the different paints will stain the surface more than others. This one I feel like the mineral paper I find stains more than the Yupo. The Yupo you can lift,
Yeah.
I found quite a bit.
You can wash it right off.
Yeah. So the other thing I like to use is just black ink. Just because I don't, this is just an ink, yeah. And one of the things that I've just I kind of play with in my pieces is just that kind of competition between that transparency of those watercolors and the fluidity of it, and the like severe opacity of just black ink. And yeah, it does. You can kind of like the watercolors are very like fluid and just. I don't know, there's a word that I'm looking for, but they're lovely. But yeah, there's this flow. They're very tranquil. You know, it's just what they are. But when you do a lot of them, sometimes I find that like, sorry, that's another heart. I was going to do another shoot for you, but it gets boring after a while. I know. Yeah.
Sarah, is this Bristol paper?
That's Bristol. Yeah, smooth Bristol. I like a nice smooth surface so I can get the texture of the pigments to come through. I don't know if that's exactly what you want out of a traditional watercolor. You tend to notice the textures of the actual paint that are going on the paper rather than the texture of it. It's
Rather than
yeah.
texture of the paper.
Yeah, because it shows. But you know, these inks, you don't need a lot of this, and you really just have to kind of touch the surface, and it does kind of flow. The more water and the more ink that you use, you know, the more it's going to flow.
Oh, wow.
But you get a very similar thing that happens with the acrylic inks, and it does
That
flow.
one turned out kind of like a face.
Yeah,
It looks like it's a face blown.
it does. But that's kind of how I do, like, but if I sit down to do something, like, I'll usually, if I do like how about a cat? I can do a really simple cat, like this. But it's the same process, because I will just say, oh, I don't, you know, what color do I want to start? You know, it's usually a gray, because I like gray and yellow, so it's one of those. But were you going to say something?
No.
Okay.
I was just happily agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Could you show us your palette? It doesn't look like what I can think of. as
It's quite terrible. I don't,
Yeah, that's good.
like, it's bad.
It looks like a galaxy.
If it gets,
Something from the Hubble.
with water
yeah, it's the old tin.
and you squeeze
Yeah.
out of the tube.
Yeah, I use the wet watercolor tubes and just put them on there. This is my second one. I have another one, a couple in my studio that if they get too bad, I ditch them.
You see them with the little, indentations and red goes here,
Yeah.
and blue goes here.
I like those, but I I kind of chaotically mix the colors. Did you have a?
I'm just curious, if you pick up that one you just did with the black spot in the middle and just kind of tilt it, is it gonna run?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little shaky. The bigger your pools, yeah, it'll run down onto my hand.
Yeah. The bleeding heart.
Yeah, but it will.
Running. Run a towel.
No, I hold paper towels down here. You can get some nice drip work with it, and you can be very controlling with it. Like I quite enjoy it. I love it a lot.
Do you reuse your paints on the palettes after they dry out?
Yeah.
After they dry?
Yeah, they work great. That's kind of why I like them, because I don't have to keep buying new.
That's what I found.
But you know, same process. If I start to do this is going to be a very, very simple cat, so don't judge me on. I'll usually start with my ears and make a nice little face, and oh, that looks nice. You know, just don't even think about it, but just give them a nice little body, a little back.
And you're kind of making a silhouette.
Yeah.
At this point.
Give them some little feet if you want to. And then just a little tail. And any, like, you can, like, as long as you kind of practice and, like, figure out, you know, what shapes work for you, you can do any shape you want. Like, if you're really, really good at, like, figuring out, like, if I do more figure drawing, like, if I do a lot of it, I don't really need the model. I can just kind of be like, oh, yeah, that's what I want. But a lot of times I'll work with, you know, a photograph of something, or I'll take my other paintings. Like, if I like the figure that I sent around, like, if I like the pose, so I'll just keep going, and I'll do maybe like a few more, you know, just keep. And they all come out different. I think I have a few more in here that are of that same pose.
Can I ask a question on this one?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, there are places on here where it looks like the paint cooled
Yep.
before it dried and it comes shiny,
Mm-hmm.
where in other places, yeah. that's
Yeah,
what I thought.
it's too much paint. I think there's one of
I
the
like it, though.
one of the additives, and I feel like
Okay.
it might be the Oxgal. There's a couple things you can add to watercolors that make it more glossy when it dries. I usually stay away from it, so it's just whatever's naturally in the paint, because I like that matte finish. I think I might have rubbed that with some of the wax finish, the cold wax medium, which yeah, it's just it's a nice way to finish watercolors if you want to. I just kind of started doing that because somebody mentioned it to me. Oh, are they fixed? And I was like, no. And then I was starting to think, oh, well, do I need to frame it? Like, do I need to put it behind glass? So I was like trying to find things that would finish it to kind of protect it from dust and just moisture and whatnot. The wax works pretty good. You just have to be really careful when you're applying it that you don't get dust in your application process. But it doesn't affect the watercolors at all because it's wax. It's not gonna, you know, spread them.
Sarah, in this book, here and there, every once in a while, there are shiny parts.
Oh yeah.
What makes that happen?
Oh, I didn't show you guys this. Okay, so I will use glitter,
Well, the glitter, no.
obviously, but
Other
there is
places-
some paint. There's some paint that I didn't show you, but I'll show you on the cap. Same thing with the inks. The Dalhousie also. This is pink. Let's actually go with the gold. This is the iridescent ones that they have. The Dalhousie iridescent. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love this one too, and I use this a lot. And I think I use it so much, like a lot of these inks, that it does get mixed in with my palette. So you will notice if you do a lot of this and you're mixing back and forth, that iridescent quality in that ink will stay in your watercolors, yeah, if you keep using. So just be aware if you don't want that. It happens. But this stuff spreads just like the watercolor ink. But it's very shiny. And depending on the light, and unfortunately it does dry in the droppers, so every now and then I'll just give myself a nice thing. But you just get a nice flow, and it gives this beautiful, like, shimmery quality to it. I don't know if you can, it's not going to show up on the,
Yeah, we can see it spreading.
yeah, it's,
And it's watercolor ink.
yeah,
That doesn't make sense.
it's, yeah. This, did you ask me?
I did.
Yeah, this.
So it's not, there is a color to it?
Yeah, that particular one is the golden. I have another one. Let me grab it.
Well, I know, I'm looking at.
I do the pink, the blue. There's a yellow. Yeah, the green. Yeah. They're very shiny. Yeah. It's the FW. I don't know what that stands for, but Dalhousie FW. They make a solid color too without the iridescent. This one I got any of the art stores. I've gotten it at Michael's. I've gotten it at the Rochester Art Supply. They have a pretty good selection. Amazon. Yeah. Some of them you can get in large bottles, but not all the colors. But you don't need much because it does spread pretty well. So if you just put a little bit of that in your painting while you're going, you'll get a nice shimmer to things that you want to, add to it. be aware, though, it is very difficult to photograph. So if you're going to photograph and make prints, it's very rarely going to show up in the prints. And it can sometimes, when you take photographs of it, it does, photography just kind of flares into the thing. So you do have to do a lot of editing when you use these. If you want prints, like that sort of thing. How do I treat? I don't. I'll let them dry. And if they're not dry, those will probably dry. If they don't dry, I'll just sop up the puddles with like some paper towel. And you can do that intentionally. It will give it a little bit, whatever texture's on your paper towel, it'll show in there pretty good. But it does, they dry pretty quickly. Yeah, that's the watercolor. These two other pictures. I think it's acrylic, though. I don't think it's, because I feel like it doesn't, I think once it dries, I think so. I haven't experimented too much going back into it.
It seems like everybody is mixing all kinds anyways.
Yeah.
Mark, do you want to speak up so other people can hear your question?
Well, it wasn't a question. I was just saying, I've been finding the last couple of years talking with people in the club and looking online that every company is making products that mix the medias together. So I found wash that was acrylic based, and I'm thinking it's a watercolor though, but now it's got the acrylic polymer in it, so it gives you a different finish, and it's not as water soluble when it dries, I guess. I mean, weird things like that. So I'm having issues with ink that's watercolor ink, or what is it really? Or is it acrylic? It's just funny to me.
It says here the watercolor ink can dry so it's permanent.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's an acrylic. Yeah, that stuff. But it functions as, like, when it's fluid, as very watercolory. Once it dries, though, I haven't noticed that it like re-wets itself. Like, it doesn't come back.
That made a line right across there, didn't it?
Yeah.
Where you
Well, yeah, it wasn't as wet, so it was kind of more controlled. But, like, you can keep, like, if you keep adding more water, like, it's just going to flow.
Right. And you could drag the brush through it, too.
Yeah. And you can see how it dries. It dries very, like, matte in that light gray. So if you want it to be black, you really got to go in there. And you could go back in if you wanted and, after it dries, add some. It might affect the watercolor a little bit, but not too much.
So if you want a real dense opaque color, you have to do it right off the bat. That's what I think you're saying.
You just said
With the
You're
black,
going
with the
back
black.
and adding black now.
Yeah, with the black. If you want a solid black, you either have to add a lot, or you got to go back in afterwards so that it doesn't flow as much, because the ink will spread out. But the ink also, I don't know, I think the water just breaks down the binder of it quite a bit, so you get that kind of like, what is it called? I don't know what it's called. There's a word for it when it breaks up and it like crackles. Because you can buy something that actually like intentionally does that to your watercolors.
You're using the ink, watercolor ink, and it dries, then it's impermeable,
Yeah,
unlike watercolor.
right.
That is what you said.
Yeah. As far as is what I've experimented with. Yeah.
Dropped water on it and nothing happened.
Yeah. But I do mix a lot of like these are definitely acrylic, 100%. I'm just assuming this is acrylic. Yeah.
And it's based on whatever the base is in it, right?
Yeah, because I don't think it actually has any of the like binders.
The binder.
Yeah. What is it? It's
It's a polymer or something? Are you thinking?
yeah. The watercolor binder is specific, and that's what makes it not like dry. Like it dries, but you can re-wet it. The acrylic dries. It's done. It's set. You're done. Yeah.
Now that one that you put the salt on, it seems like it sucked all the fluid
Mhm.
and it made it completely different
Yeah.
from what it was before.
Yeah.
I've been watching it and it's
Yeah.
changed completely.
It does. Like so, like, this is just dry salt, but like if depending on when you put it on, like it'll either draw more or it'll sit there and kind of dissolve. But salt pulls your pigment. If you use alcohol, it does the opposite. It pushes it.
Gum arabic is one of the
Yeah,
binders.
gum arabic. Yeah, and that's what breaks down in the water to let it keep getting this nice thing. And then adding the oxgal will give it a nice fluidity. The oxgal is very expensive, which is why sometimes I just put a little dish soap into it to get more fluidity. I mean, but you can see like the shapes stay pretty good. Like I said, I don't know what the finish is on this paper. My guess is some sort of like silica gel or like silica powder, because it does, like, it stops the water. Like it stays where you put it, that I found. So if you use less water, you could probably get a lot of control out of that. If you like to work in that kind of like controlled, very linear fashion, you could definitely do that.
Is there a difference when you said you use the wax over some of the paintings? Is there a difference when you use it between using it on the Bristol, on the mineral paper, on the Yupo?
The wax, not so much.
No. So you can use it on any
It does work. I did notice the wax will, that figure I passed around has it on it, and if you apply it too thickly, it does tend to ripple the mineral paper. I don't know why.
Yeah, because the wax is so thick.
I don't know if it's just because of the way the wax is dried and constricting, maybe, but if you, my guess is if you applied that very, very consistently, it probably wouldn't happen.
How much wax do you put on there?
Not much. You don't need much. It's just like,
One time
you can do it more than once if you want like a thicker finish, but I found it just like a light, like I'll put a little bit on like a paper towel and like just kind of buff it, and it works. It's kind of like a little nerve-wracking at first because you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? But it's wax. It's not going to dissolve. The iridescent qualities of some of those inks might come off with the wax, and some like if you have the black pigments sometimes sit on the top, they might be a little chalky. Some of those might spread with the wax. So you just gotta experiment and be careful, as you're buffing and rubbing.
If you put wax or some other coating over the top, would it make it more archival? I know you don't care, but I mean, would it?
In the sense that it would stop it from, getting destroyed, and if you wanted to clean it. I think for the paper, 100%, yeah, the paper 100%. Like wood pulp paper or rag paper, yeah, the wax would definitely preserve it better. Probably less deterioration over time. This, I don't know. I don't even know I don't know if this is going to deteriorate. Like this, the mineral paper, I'm guessing it won't.
I don't use wax, I know people don't like to use it, but I use that Krylon.
Yeah, I like a spray. Just shake it up and like spray
I
things.
use the matte spray on watercolor on Yupo.
Yeah.
And multi-layer, maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 layers. Then you can wipe it clean.
Yeah.
If it had no spray on it, it
Oh
would
no,
wipe off.
yeah, you would definitely yeah.
Yeah.
Because it would, because the watercolor will re-wet and it'll stain. Sure.
to go the next step, once you put the wax on, you can't do another layer of anything else.
Nope. You could do more wax. You could. I haven't experimented too much going in after I've finished it, so you'd have to get into like some of the, what is it called, the wax encaustic. You could try getting into some of that over top of it. I haven't tried.
And you can buff the wax after you put it on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just keep
Gives it a
going.
little shine. And if you wipe it off.
Yeah, I had heard that, trying to speak up, but we're a smaller group
Yeah.
now.
It's breaking up.
Somebody told me the wax collects dust, that's a downside but people are here saying, no, you just buff it again and it takes the dust off.
Yeah, your initial like application of it, just be very, very clean. Like if when it's still like sticky, like yeah, you can get a lot of dust in there. So if you're doing it somewhere where you have a lot of dust, maybe don't do it. Move it somewhere where it's like clean, and use a
I just started
something.
using it. I use my fingers to apply it.
Yeah, that's what I've seen a lot of people do.
So I was gonna ask you, if you put the paper towel on, the roughness of the paper towel could scratch your painting
Yeah.
underneath.
A little bit.
Trying to put the wax on.
Yeah.
So it's better
You'll see it. Yeah.
Those two,
I use gloves, I wear plastic gloves, I would use plastic
the
gloves.
two
Yeah.
pieces I just had in the show, the spirals, those I cold wax over watercolor paper.
Yeah.
So this
And I
means
just
you
dip
don't
one
have to
layer
frame it under glass.
Right, it's.
Right, then you don't have to,
No.
because I put them on wood panel, and they
Yeah.
wanted it, and so
So
that's,
that's a huge advantage
yeah,
to
it is,
not
and,
have to.
yeah, less
Yeah.
expensive.
Framing's expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the original reasons I wanted to get away from paper, was because I just like I couldn't afford to frame everything, and I'm like, if I hang all the paper up, it's just going to get dusty and gross, and then over time you end up with just a mess.
I ended up gluing the watercolor paper to the wood panel and then cold waxing over it.
Yeah,
And
that
it
works.
Does it fade?
Yeah, I think you're gonna
Yeah.
show that.
Well, I mean, I've
I mean, once, if you wax it, I know it'll help with the fading. If you don't wax, do they fade, do you find, or is it?
if you probably had it in like a lot of direct sunlight, it might, and it's really going to depend on your paints. I haven't noticed much. I haven't noticed much at all. Like, and I have some in my studio that I've had for at least 5 years, more than that, and I haven't noticed any fading. I have some large ones that I've rolled up, and it doesn't really come off. The ink will come off over time. If you add any like the salt, the glitter, like that sort of things, you've really got to fix those on top, or they will come off.
But if you don't have that, you can roll it and it's.
Oh yeah, I was surprised at how resilient it is, and you can also go in if it does get dirty. On the Yupo, I found you can go in with like a kneaded eraser, and if you're careful, you can just keep working it, and it does remove a lot of like, if you're getting like little fingerprints or something on there, it does remove it fairly well.
On this paper, it's so thick,
This one, I have trouble lifting off of this once it's dry. Like the Yupo, I haven't had too much of an issue. Yeah, and I think it's just the finish. Like it's a little bit more satiny, so maybe it just has more texture and like, I don't know. It's chemistry of some sort that I don't understand completely.
Sarah, some people in the room are having trouble hearing you.
Oh, okay. We were just talking about. Gosh, I can't even. What we're.
cold wax,
Yeah, we were talking about the cold wax medium
dirty.
and rubbing that onto the surface. People are using their hands. You can use like a cloth. Sometimes I use paper towel. You can glove your hand, and just put it on like like that, and it works. You don't need much of it. It does spread quite nice. But I was also saying, before you finish it, the Yupo, you can go back in like with a kneaded eraser and kind of lift off some smudges that you made, or like fingerprints. Like if you've got, as you're handling things, like you get a lot of paint and sometimes you get fingerprints, those things will lift off with the kneaded eraser, from what I've found.
I'm dying to see the rest of the things on the table. We can't see them.
What? You want to-
You want the light
Why
back
don't
up?
we let people
Yeah, come on up. I don't.
never get to go up and